Yeah, I'm pretty sure the title tells you all you need to know. After this video, I'm pretty sure Titans will be getting the next nerf. Just saying. That's just how ridiculous today's build is. Honestly, I was blown away at how strong this build felt when putting it together. I went through a few iterations and tweaks every single activity and eventually landed on what I'm about to show you. And this isn't even its final form. This is just what I've managed to slap together with the gear that I've managed to get my hands on so far in Edge of Fate. Just giving you a heads up that this video has a ton of information in it, so use the timestamps in the description to skip to the sections that you actually want to know about. So if you do end up giving this build a try for yourself, please let me know in the comments if you changed anything and if you think that it's better than what I've done. Please leave a like on the video if you find it helpful or if you just find the build fun. As always, I really appreciate the support from everyone who has visited the channel regularly and has subscribed. You're all absolutely amazing. So, as you can see, the build revolves around Actium War Rig, but not because of the damage and reload on machine guns. I was actually more interested in the ammo generation of the exotic. It got a slight rework with the release of Edge of Fate, where upon getting a final blow with an auto rifle or machine gun, it boosts their stability, ammo generation, and damage. And that's the part we're focusing on here, is the ammo generation. The change that they actually made to how ammo is generated is incredible. It felt really clunky and bad at the start of Edge of Fate, I'll be honest, but as I've built into it and started actually playing around with the weapon stat, I've very quickly changed my tune. If you build into the weapon stat, you can end up with piles of ammo bricks on the ground just like you saw at the start, literally tons of heavy and special bricks that I just had to find a way to abuse, and that has led me to creating this abomination of a build. Double special in this economy is actually kind of viable. I've opted for mint retrograde in the kinetic slot and returned memory in the energy slot, and I'll explain why in a bit. But to start with, let me explain the subclass setup. I've opted to go with Solar Titan for a few reasons. One of the reasons is that there are a lot of artifact synergies with Solar this season, so why not take advantage of them? The super to run should be your preferred choice. I've been running Hammer of Soul because it breaks some of the solo op boss shields and skips DPS mechanics, but I think Burning Maul does more damage. Choose your barricade of choice, but for your melee, I'm strongly suggesting Throwing Hammer, since it also got a buff, or rather fix, in Edge of Fate. Finally, for your grenade, a healing option is always nice, but the build does provide a few alternatives for healing, so change this if you want a DPS option. For your aspects, I suggest Soul Invictus because sunspots provide a ton of neutral game benefits like restoration and ability regen. And then for your second aspect, I suggest Roaring Flames because it can buff both your melee and super damage as well as your grenade if you run a DPS option. For your fragments, Ember of Torches to give you radiant with every hammer hit, allowing you to get free damage buff very frequently with very little effort. Ember of Ashes so that you apply more Scorch so that when you do scorch enemies, you have a better chance of triggering an ignition from it. This is great when paired with certain roles of Returned Memory and Unwavering Duty, as well as the artifact mod Radiant Shrapnel. For your last two fragments, this is where things can change up a little bit. I suggest Ember of Tempering, Solar Weapon Final Blows grant a boost to your health stat, and Solar Weapon Final Blows can create fire sprites. And then also Ember of Mercy so that we can take advantage of these fire sprites to give ourselves another way to heal and get restoration. Some noteworthy alternatives are Empyrean to extend Radiant and Restoration with Solar Final Blows, and Ember of Benevolence to further improve ability regeneration when you apply a solar buff to teammates, which is only usable in team-based activities, hence why I've kind of kept it out of the build to begin with. Now, I stressed it just a moment ago, but the reason for Solar Titan is mainly for the Bonk Hammer, and this is related to the double special suggestion. When you run Master or Grandmaster Portal content, most players will select no starting ammo. This is just an easy score multiplier and you should be picking this every time. But if you do, then you'll be shit out of luck because you start with no heavy and no special, meaning you've got nothing to kill enemies with. So my suggestion to kickstart your loadout is to use your abilities to get kills and use that to generate special. And this is where Throwing Hammer shines. With a heavy-handed mod plus stacks on stacks, you can generate a brick of special ammo with just 2 kills and a finisher, allowing you to get the build rolling really easily compared to other subclasses which might have you waiting a few minutes to get abilities. Or you could be in a situation where you're not able to get back-to-back kills easily without dying if the content is say 40 or 50 plus power difficulty. Since Throwing Hammer provides cure when you pick up the hammer, it makes surviving while getting close easier, and with Roaring Flames and Soul Invictus, you get an increase in damage and additional healing. Now for your weapons and armor. I'll start with the weapons. Mint Retrograde is a must-have in the kinetic slot. It does incredible damage, has great ad clear, and has some great perk options. However, its ammo generation stat is pretty bad, which I think is Bungie's way of balancing the gun. However, they didn't balance it enough. See, Mint can actually roll 2 weapon perks that allow it to increase its ammo generation stat by a pretty unfair amount. In the left column, we have Enhanced Envious Arsenal, and in the right, we have Enhanced Chain Reaction. With both of these, Mint can reach a total of 60 ammo generation stat. However, I personally like rewind rounds in the left column, since if you run this, you will never have to reload, and it just feels incredible. Then the cherry on top is Temporal Blast, which deals a bonus chunk of damage when you deal a certain amount of damage with your weapon. With Mint Retrograde, you can almost do that in every single burst. See in the bottom left, the stacks of Temporal Blast increasing and then triggering. This is actually dependent upon dealing a certain amount of damage, so in content where you deal less damage, this might not trigger on every burst, but every other burst. For your energy weapon, I'm strongly suggesting Returned Memory, specifically with Impromptu Ammunition. Returned Memory is the only special weapon with this perk, and kills with this will further increase the ammo generation from all sources, which means slaying out makes even more ammo. For your right column perks, almost every single one is a good option. My favorite is Burning Ambition, which applies a ton of Scorch thanks to Ember of Ashes, but with so many other options like Adagio or Redirection, it will be hard to get a bad roll. And finally, in the heavy slot, the weapon that started this all, Unwavering Duty. See, Unwavering Duty, like most Trials guns, roll with some really good perks in both the left column and the right column. You can roll things like Rampage or Incandescent in the left, and then stack a damage perk like Killing Tally or Onslaught in the right. Pair this with Temporal Blast, which adds an additional layer of damage, and you have an ad clear boss melting machine. And even though the ammo generation stat is mediocre, still better than Mint, when paired with Actium War Rig, your LMG can become an ammo generating monster for both heavy and special on its own. Which leads me to the armor setup. Actium War Rig is of course the exotic of choice for the build, and the stat that you will really want to build into is weapons. See, each point after 100 points in the weapon stat starts to create ammo bricks with extra ammo in them, and since we're going all in on the ammo generation, having as close to 200 weapon stat as possible is a must-have for this build. The second stat that you should focus on is having at least 50 melee. This will ensure that when you pick up your throwing hammer, you instantly get your melee back, allowing your initial melee chain to be as painless as possible. There isn't any particular armor set that I recommend. Having a 4-piece tech set would be really nice, but it's not a requirement for the build. For armor mods, starting at the helmet, you will want to stack as many ammo finders as you're comfortable running. These are separate to the ammo generation stat on your weapon and provide an extra chunk of ammo progress just for getting a kill. I suggest running 2 heavy and 1 special to make the ammo generation as bountiful as possible, but if you want to run a siphon mod, go for it. On your gauntlets, run heavy-handed to easily generate orbs from powered melee kills, and then run a reloader or 2 to suit the build. On your chest piece, you will want to run 2 strand ammo generation mods and a solar ammo generation mod. The strand generation will add +20 to the ammo generation stat for all strand weapons per mod. So if you have the Godroll Mint, which has 60 ammo generation, plus 40 from the chest mods, you will cap your ammo generation stat on the Mint Retrograde at 100. I was running a solar generation mod to benefit the LMG and the sidearm, but you could swap this for concussive resist or some other resist if you find that the content you're playing is hitting too hard. On your boots, I recommend running stacks on stacks so that you only need 2 orbs of power to generate special instead of 3. Then a solar scavenger mod to boost the ammo per brick for Unwavering Duty and Returned Memory. Then also a solar holster mod. This is just a quality of life pick so that every time you pull out the sidearm or the LMG, you will always have a reloaded weapon. You should try to increase your weapon stat as high as possible without the use of font mods. On your class item, of course, Special Finisher. finisher, but I also strongly recommend always pairing special finisher with proximity ward. Not only does this overshield let you survive basically everything in the game, it is possible to chain finishes back to back in harder content and actually start health regeneration, because damage done to the shield doesn't stop health regeneration. The last mod is personal preference, but since I'm not running a siphon mod, having just one extra way to make orbs of power is a nice touch, so run Reaper. Lastly, the artifact setup. The first column is your anti-champion, so pick whatever suits the activity you're going into, but remember, you have a pulse rifle and a sidearm, so take advantage of them. In the second column, Diviner's discount to make scavenger mods much cheaper across the board is fantastic. In the same column, Flame, Fiber, and Freeze, if you decide you want to run a siphon mod, will give you access to both a strand and a solar siphon mod. In the third column, Fever and Chill will allow you to trigger Radiant from a distance with the LMG instead of having to throw your hammer, which could be quite useful in some cases. Also in the third column is Reciprocal Draw. This perk is fantastic for returned memory, especially with my suggested playstyle. The perk says rapid non-sidearm kills, but it really means up to 3 kills, where you'll need 3 red bar kills or 2 majors to trigger the perk, and it can be about 7 or 8 seconds between the first and the final kill, which isn't very rapid. Once you have the perk ready, there is no timer. It will stay ready until you draw the sidearm, where you will have 7 seconds of increased damage. From my testing, it was about 15%, but I sometimes hit 30% and couldn't really figure out why. Back to the artifact, the last perk in the third column that I suggest is Refresh Threads. This will let you get even more benefit from the fire sprites that you will be creating. In the fourth column, the only mod that I suggest is Elemental Coalescence, since this gives us just another way to make fire sprites with this build. None of the other mods affect the build directly, so pick whichever one you like. And in the final column, since it will be very easy to be Radiant almost the entire time, run Shield Crush for the increased grenade recharge, and Radiant Shrapnel for the additional ad clear and DPS. Finally, we're on to the gameplay loop. Since we're running double specials, you have to give the build some fuel to get it going if you're running an activity with no starting ammo. Things like raids, you'll be fine because you have a rally banner. Your first priority is going to be to get a special finisher, so you will be aiming to get 2 kills with your throwing hammer to generate orbs with heavy-handed. However, you have to be aware that there is a cooldown based on how many heavy-handed mods you're running. So if there are only a few enemies around, like at the start of the Whisper mission, space them out so that you can get the build rolling as soon as possible. Once you have some special ammo, get a kill with your sidearm to trigger impromptu ammunition, and then switch to Mint Retrograde to get kills while impromptu ammunition is active. You don't have to constantly keep the perk active, but switch back and forth between your specials to maximize your ammo generation when it seems viable. With how strong Mint is and the buffs that returned memory can get it, it should be easy to get a number of kills and trigger a few heavy bricks to drop on the ground. When you see that you're running low on special, or that you have too much heavy ammo, start using your heavy and returned memory together. Basically, you will swap between using Mint Retrograde and Unwavering Duty based on how much ammo you have, while using returned memory to improve ammo generation the entire time. If you ever run out of ammo, you can restart the build by getting orbs of power from melee kills and then doing a special finisher. Against bosses, you can use either Mint Retrograde for DPS or your LMG. The LMG will be best if you have a few stacks of the auto-loading link from Actium War Rig, so just bear that in mind. Now for the drawbacks and weaknesses of this build. Honestly, my biggest gripe about the build is that 2 of the 3 weapons are from PvP playlists, which can turn off a lot of people, including myself. And the third weapon comes from Pinnacle Ops activities, which aren't always fast to farm for solo players. I'm washed when it comes to PvP, and I was getting absolutely destroyed in trials on the weekend, but it wouldn't be called a grind if it wasn't soul consuming, I guess. So if you're like me and want specific roles on these weapons, then you will have to jump into the Crucible and get good, just like I'm having to. The next weakness worth mentioning is that the build has absolutely no way to counter overload champions. So activities with overloads means you need to either change the build or have a partner. If you have to swap, my suggestion is swap the the sidearm for an overload weapon, which you will lose access to the strong weapon with impromptu ammunition, but at least you will be able to complete the activity that you're doing. And that's it. This was a super long video with a lot of information, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to make sure that the build was properly explained. With how many factors there are affecting ammo generation, and with how powerful the weapon stat actually is, I was thinking of doing a video on ammo generation in the future, so let me know in the comments if you have any niche mechanics or tips around ammo generation, so that I can start getting all of that information together now. But that's enough from me. As always, thanks for watching the video. If you've reached this point, I hope you give this build a try for yourself. Have a good one.